Chapter 3697. He's already dead and you're still putting on an act. Who are you trying to show? The more you act, the more fake you look. I think Princess Yulu is right. You were the mastermind behind all of this. D. Luo. What motive do you have? Trapping us in the auction. Don't tell me you really want to join forces with other forces to control the Earth domain? Seeing Yi Qing Luo still talking to a corpse, everyone felt that it was ridiculous. That auctioneer was obviously kicked to death by Yi Qing Luo earlier. Even now, he was still putting on an act and chatting with a corpse. Did she treat them as fools? The more Yi Qing Luo acted in this way, on the contrary, they started to suspect Yi Qing Luo even more. That white dragon monster is definitely created by her. Let's catch her first. Then we'll force her to tell us the way to leave the auction. That's right. Catch her first. We can't let her escape. The crowd swarmed forward, intending to catch Yi Qing Luo. At the same time, the crowd suddenly felt a burst of dense and overbearing profound energy suddenly spreading in the air. The vast aura made the entire space felt oppressive. Following that, everyone was shocked by that powerful aura as they retreated a few steps. Swoosh, a slight sound was heard. The crowd saw the auctioneer, who was originally lying on the ground like a corpse, actually stood up straight. And this vigorous energy was being emitted from his body. Everyone's heart trembled in shock. What was going on? Why? The dead auctioneer suddenly came back to life? And that energy which had far exceeded their imagination, where did it come from? They had participated in the auction for so many years. This was the first time they found out that the auctioneer who had been hosting the auction for them had such a powerful ability. This profound energy was overbearing and terrifying. It was emitted in the air. Unknowingly, it gave one an extremely oppressive feeling. How did you discover me? The auctioneer's eyes were gloomy, totally different from his amiable expression during the auction. His sentence was obviously directed at Yi Qing Luo. The crowd heard the murderous tone. Their hearts couldn't help but clench together. It made one's heart feel an indescribable oppressive feeling. However, what surprised everyone was, facing the auctioneer, the young lady's expression didn't change in the slightest. It was as if he was not affected by the auctioneer at all. Between his brows, his emotions were extremely faint. Yi Qing Luo met the auctioneer's gaze and the pink lips under the veil curled into a slight arc. Ever since I saw that monster, I've already guessed it. She paused for a moment, and then waved the devouring flame fan at the tip of her finger. I didn't expect that my guess would actually be correct. The auctioneer's gaze was fixed on the fan in Yi Qing Luo's hands as his brows sunk. It's that weapon. Yi Qing Luo waved her glower flame fan. That's right, inside. There's my secret weapon. Although it might not be able to kill you, at the very least, it will prevent you from automatically recovering. The glowing fan had been refined by Tang Beiyuan and had devoured Yoin's mental power. Right now, the glowing flame fan was the best weapon to deal with the undead puppets. However, this corpse puppet from the land. It was the auctioneer in front of him. Although it was not a finished product. But he was very strong. Her mental strength was also a little taxing on her. The glowing flame fan was unable to deal too much damage to the auctioneer. Chapter 3698. Also, all of you will become food for my war pet, White Fang. The auctioneer opened his arms and spoke in a dignified manner. The corners of his mouth curled up into an evil smile. His figure suddenly moved. In the next instant, he appeared in midair. And the white dragon monster that was originally hovering in the sky and roaring from time to time. Its huge body moved downwards. Then, he took the auctioneer's hand steadily. This scene caused everyone to be dumbfounded. That monster, it was actually the auctioneer's war pet? That was a man-eating monster. Everyone looked at the powerful and completely different auctioneer and suddenly said, You are not from the Earth realm? What do you want to do? Such a powerful aura. And he could subdue that invulnerable monster. This was definitely not a strength that a person from the Earth realm could have. Facing everyone's shocked expression, the auctioneer obviously enjoyed it. He sat on the head of the white dragon monster and smiled proudly and arrogantly. I used to be from the Earth realm, but now I am not. He chuckled. The black gas in his eyes was like a surging ink spring, surging. Listening to the auctioneer's answer, the fear in everyone's heart increased. Not from the Earth realm now. In other words, the auctioneer had ascended. Now he had become a person from the heaven realm. So, what happened today was done by the people from the heaven realm. Someone from the heaven realm was ambitious. They wanted to change the dynasty of the Earth realm. This thought flashed across everyone's mind. It made everyone's face turn pale. Ha ha ha, you bunch of stupid people, no one can escape. The auctioneer laughed wildly. Suddenly, he stretched out his finger and said proudly, White Fang, go. Devour the souls of these people, devour their Xian Qi, and turn their power into our power. Roar, the dragon's roar was deafening. The white dragon's body, which was hovering in mid-air, shook violently. It was as if the world had been turned upside down by the white dragon monster. Everyone's face became more and more pale. That monster, the monster is going to attack people again. Quick. Run. That monster hasn't moved, so it's waiting for its master. He had seen how terrifying the white dragon monster was. The crowd watched as the white dragon bent down and shook its body. They were so terrified that they almost collapsed to the ground. The white dragon roared, opened its bloody mouth, and rushed towards the people below. It was huge. This mouth could swallow at least 10 people into its stomach. Everyone was horrified. Run. Don't let that monster touch you. Once bitten by a monster. That was the consequence of dying without a complete corpse. Ha ha ha. You can't escape. None of you will be able to escape. The auctioneer was delighted to see the crazed crowd. He loved to watch his prey flee frantically. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape from the palm of his hand. This feeling was refreshing. The white dragon swooped down. His entire body exuded a murderous aura, as well as a bloody and savage aura. Everyone felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. The white dragon monster was impervious to weapons, water, and fire. They could not fight back against the white dragon. He wanted to escape. However, he was not as fast as the monster. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. It was just a matter of who killed first or later. Everyone panicked in their hearts and fell into despair and chaos. Suddenly, a hurricane swept past. Chapter 3699. The alluring red glow seemed as though it could dye the entire heaven and earth. A puppet without any spiritual intelligence, what's there to be afraid of? Following that, a young lady's clear and melodious voice rang. And it was at this critical moment. A red figure charged straight towards that white dragon monster. This scene shocked everyone so much that they drew in a cold breath. They couldn't believe what they saw in front of them. Not afraid? That wasn't an ordinary monster. How could they not be afraid? If they were bitten, there was no possibility of survival at all. Looking at the scene of Yi Qing Luo colliding with that monster, everyone's anxious hearts were all tightened into a ball. Isn't it just a dragon? An imitation, and you dare to call it a dragon? The young lady scoffed lightly as her tone was filled with disdain. When the crowd heard this, they were really shocked into a daze. They couldn't believe what their ears had heard. They even wondered if they had heard wrongly. Earlier, the meaning of the young lady's words was, she also had a dragon. And it was a real dragon. Whereas the auctioneer who was sitting on the white dragon monster's back revealed a sinister cold smile. Young lady, don't joke around. Just based on you also have a dragon? A real dragon? He laughed loudly. This dragon of mine is not some imitation, but a real dragon. Yi Qing Luo flipped her leg and her slender hand flipped. The glower flame fan on her fingertips was like a spark, flipping in her palm. Profound energy condensed, thousands of feet of wind waves surged. Against that white dragon monster, two bursts of energy collided directly. One after another, the sharp piercing dragon's roar reverberated through the earth. The young lady's expression didn't change at all. Profound energy surged. Heaven and earth rotated. The young lady's brows were like a blooming flower that led to the netherworld, bewitching, bloodthirsty and alluring. Her lips curled upwards as her palm moved and a clear voice spilled out from her mouth, Azure Dragon. Her voice had just landed. In a split second, the surroundings were covered with a layer of black fog. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. In the thick black fog, there seemed to be something breaking out from the ground. The surrounding air seemed to have condensed into frost. Soon after, as the sky surged, everyone saw a ray of green light. It was like a ray of light that flashed across the darkness. Bit by bit, he pulled out a thin seam. Then, bit by bit, they decorated the entire sky. Soon after, the black mist slowly dispersed to both sides. A sonorous dragon roar, like a shocking momentum, broke through the sky. The moment the dragon's roar rang out, the entire world seemed to have quietened down. All that was left was this extremely long dragon roar. His aura swallowed mountains and rivers, intimidating all directions. That was the moment the dragon roar stopped. From all directions, a series of beastly roars rang out in unison, echoing continuously. That was the sound of 10,000 beasts submitting to him. This movement. The auctioneer's eyes narrowed a little. The expression on his face darkened. Those people who were frozen on the spot and scared out of their wits felt like their hearts were about to jump out of their mouths. The orderly roars of the beasts seemed to be echoing in his ears again and again. The dragon race had appeared. All beasts submit. This was the true description of the dragon race. Roar, 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 the dragon's roars were louder and louder as it kept surging in the sky. A powerful and vast energy spread out in the surroundings. Following that, the sky was filled with thick black fog. Chapter 3700. The huge green dragon descended from the sky with the momentum of 1,000 caddies. The green dragon's scales seemed to be adorned with sparkling jewels, sparkling under the thick black fog. The surroundings were filled with gales, howling incessantly. Under the raging waves. The red-robed young lady stepped on the waves as she walked towards the place where the green dragon was hovering. All the surrounding black fog followed the young lady's approach. And directly lined up on both sides. After stepping on the wind and waves, the young lady leapt up and flipped onto the back of the green dragon. She stood on the dragon's head. Her slender figure danced with the wind, making a fluttering sound. The moment the green dragon appeared, it suppressed the tense atmosphere of the entire chaotic auction. The green dragon hovered on the spot, its tail dragging on the ground, coiling several rounds. It proudly raised its dragon head. The dragon's whiskers fluttered along with the dragon's breath. A pair of green dragon eyes, emitting the majesty of the dragon clan. The moment the green dragon appeared, the auctioneer almost fell off White Tooth's back. Not only because of its fear, but also because the moment the azure dragon appeared, White Fang lowered his head and curled up into a ball. It didn't even have the courage to raise its head to look at the green dragon. The dragon clan showed its might. All the beasts in the world had to be obedient. This scene made the auctioneer's face gloomy. This caused the surrounding people to be both delighted and shocked. After this green dragon appeared, they then understood what a dragon was. This was a dragon. A real dragon. That white dragon monster was simply a monster. Even that monster had submitted to the majesty of a true dragon. With the existence of a dragon, what were they afraid of? Everyone's gazes were burning as they stared at the green dragon. Looking at that sparkling green scales, overflowing with brilliant colors. Looking at that huge dragon's body, coiling round and round. Looking at the young lady standing on top of the dragon's head. Indescribably domineering. Indescribably awe-inspiring. This scene could be said. The next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. They would never be able to forget this scene in front of them. How is this possible? The auctioneer was also shocked. In the air, strong fluctuations kept pressing against him. He almost fell off from White Tooth's body. Yi Qing Luo stood on top of the dragon's head. The dragon's body swayed. The air and the space swirled violently as it swayed. The power that represented the Azure Dragon was unleashed. After the fake dragon appeared, the Dragon King's eyes widened. In the pet space, the Azure Dragon was so excited that it wanted to rush out and slap him in the face. It could be said that a corpse puppet like White Fang was an insult to the dignity of a dragon. He was right. White Fang was just a corpse puppet. White Fang was not a dragon at all. Instead, it was a flood dragon. Don't underestimate the difference between a flood dragon and a dragon. However, there was a world of difference between the two. Dragons are gods. Especially as a holy beast. They were gods who lived in the heavens. As for the flood dragon, it belonged to the category of flood dragons that lived in the water, resembling snakes yet not snakes, resembling dragons yet not dragons. Before the tribulation. A flood dragon that didn't even have a dragon horn. White Fang was the flood dragon before the tribulation. For some unknown reason. He was turned into a corpse puppet and was sent to the side of the auctioneer. Oh no, White Fang wasn't the auctioneer's battle pet. It was just that the mastermind had temporarily lent White Fang to the auctioneer. A flood dragon actually pretended to be a dragon. It even used the name of a dragon to do evil. As the ancestor of dragons, how could the Azure Dragon tolerate it? Chapter 3701. This scene fell into Xiao Yulu's eyes. This caused her eyes to be covered with a layer of sinister coldness. The flames of hatred burned brightly. She gritted her teeth so hard that they broke. How could that bitch Di Luo tame a dragon? That was a dragon. In the entire world, those who had dragons as battle pets could be counted on one hand. Moreover, Xiao Yulu was even sure. Di Luo /S dragon was a few grades higher than the dragon she saw in the Linglong Palace. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her delicate body was trembling uncontrollably. Jealousy was growing in her heart. The auctioneer got up from the ground in disbelief and staggered. His hand trembled as he pointed at the girl in midair. She was so imposing that no one dared to look directly at her. His face was deathly pale, like the aura of death. White Fang. Stand up. So what if it /S a dragon? You /re an immortal dragon. Compared to it, you /re more like a dragon. The auctioneer trembled and patted White Fang /S body. He had encountered a real dragon. He had no strength to fight back. Just like before, when the people from the major forces were swallowed by White Fang and had no strength to fight back. Now, this feeling fell on his own body. It was extremely uncomfortable. It was like seeing a lake in an arid desert. After running closer, he realized that it was just a mirage. That kind of despair made him want to die. Oh, no. He had already died before. He was also a dead man now. No matter how the auctioneer shouted. White Fang was curled up in a corner, shivering and unwilling to budge. The auctioneer felt that he was really isolated and helpless. Relying on the existence of White Fang. He was just one person here. If White Fang didn't /T cooperate. How could those forces and families that were swallowed by White Fang let him go? He didn't /T dare to think about the consequences. In fact, he didn't /T have to think about it. The moment White Fang curled up in the corner. The people from the major forces were already full of joy. Seeing that White Fang had no will to fight at all. Many families that had lost more than half of their elites decisively looked for trouble. Dozens of people surrounded him. Why did you bring that monster to the auction? Why did you block the auction? What is your purpose? Who are you? Why would you do that? Let us out of the auction. At this moment, everyone couldn't wait to leave this damned place. He stayed at the auction for a moment longer. They felt that the danger still existed. However, no matter how they questioned the auctioneer, no matter how cruelly they tried to force the auctioneer did not give any answer. Instead, he looked at Yiqing Luo, who was standing in mid-air, looking at him coldly as he laughed out loud. None of you will be able to leave this place. So what if there were real dragons? Don't tell me that dragon can bring you out of this formation? Ha ha ha. Impossible. Even if the god of heaven were to come, he wouldn't be able to leave. The auctioneer laughed maniacally. Everyone started punching and kicking each other. They did not dare to use their Xian energy. He didn't dare to kill him. The current situation. Only the auctioneer knew what was going on. Looking at the mess of people, Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes slightly. The auctioneer was a corpse puppet. No matter how those people tortured the auctioneer, even if they cut him into pieces. Chapter 3702. Impervious to swords and spears, impervious to fire and water, immortal. Not only that white dragon monster. And the auctioneer. Corpse puppets. In this case, her identity had really been exposed. But what made Yiqing Luo curious was, why did those people chase her all the way to the earth boundary? She squinted her long and narrow eyes. She couldn't guess the answer to this question. So she could only let the other party answer. Yiqing Luo patted the green dragon's head lightly. The green dragon spat out a dragon's breath as its body suddenly dived downwards. An overbearing aura came charging towards them. The various powerhouses people swiftly moved away when they sensed the approaching aura. The crowd saw that arrogant green dragon slightly stooped down. The arrogant dragon's head slowly bent down. The young lady's lips curled into a smile as she said, "Thank you," to the green dragon, and with a leap, she landed on the ground. At the same time, when the young lady stood firmly on the ground, that green dragon's green light suddenly flashed. His colossal body instantly transformed into the same size as the auction house. Step by step, it followed closely behind the young lady. The surrounding people unknowingly opened up a path. Even the auctioneer, who was still lying on the ground laughing, subconsciously sat up and looked at her in a daze. But a moment later, Yiqing Luo had already walked in front of the auctioneer. Yiqing Luo stood still as her pink lips rose. "I'll give you two choices, either you answer my question or I'll beat you up until you answer my question." When the crowd heard that, their faces were filled with black lines. Simple and violent. No problem at all. The auctioneer looked at the glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands alertly as the smile on his face froze. He took a step back. Yiqing Luo followed closely as she smiled. "I know your background and your motive, don't think of lying to me." She moved closer as her 5 fingers moved. The glower flame fan was pressed against the auctioneer's chin. Then she tilted her head and innocently blinked as she laughed lightly. "I even have a way to deal with you, don't doubt my words." The auctioneer stiffened as he stared at the glower flame fan on his neck. A sinister glint flashed past his eyes. "Who on earth is your boss? What's the motive of locking everyone in the auction? All of this. Is it related to me being here?" When Yiqing Luo asked questions, there was a smile in between her brows. But the words he spat out and the tone of his voice, it was so cold that it made people shiver. The auctioneer, who had been surrounded by dozens of people and dealt with all kinds of cruel methods without batting an eyelid, now revealed a horrifying expression. His eyes widened and his neck stiffened. "Not answering? So you're choosing the second option?" Yiqing Luo's eyes curved. He moved his palm. The devouring flame fan gently slashed open. A dazzling light flashed across the auctioneer's eyes. "If you're touched by my glowing flame fan, you won't be able to recover that part of your body no matter what." She chuckled, and the hand holding the glowing flame fan slowly moved downwards through the air. Finally, it stopped 3 inches below the man's navel. She chuckled. However, you shouldn't be too bothered. After all, you're just a dead person. You don't know pain, right? The auctioneer's face turned completely pale. *CK. Even if he was a dead man. But, as a man, the most important thing can't be lacking, okay? She held a weapon and threatened the man's family jewels. Was this still a young lady? Yiqing Luo had been paying attention to the auctioneer's emotional changes. Looking at the auctioneer's black face. Chapter 3703. The auctioneer's eyes moved. Yiqing Luo continued, "Answer these 3 answers and I'll let you off." Her voice paused for a moment before she chuckled again. Her voice was very evil. "Don't say that I didn't warn you. Once you fail, the person behind you will still appear and take over your task. At that time, I will still know the answer I want." The auctioneer's body tensed up as he heard Yiqing Luo's words. The expression on his face unknowingly had some subtle changes. The next moment, he felt a burst of profound energy being released. A ball of excited flame started to burn on the glower flame fan. His body stiffened as he said, "I'll speak. I'll speak." The profound strength slowly came to a stop. The young lady's hand, which was holding the glower flame fan, pressed the fan against the auctioneer's chest. "Speak." The auctioneer looked at the fan in Yiqing Luo's hand, which was far away from his family jewels, before he heaved a sigh of relief. I also don't know who the master behind me is. My motive for coming here is to send White Teeth to the auction house. As for the reason..." He paused as he looked at White Teeth, who was still shivering in fear. "The auction will gather all the elites from the 3 main cities. What's more, most of the powerhouses will bring their own elites to the auction to declare their power." His words made everyone's gazes look over. The auctioneer's voice trembled slightly, "So, they specially set up at the periphery of the auction." Roar! Suddenly, a sharp dragon's roar reverberated through the entire sky. It also forcibly suppressed the auctioneer's voice. When he heard that dragon's roar, the auctioneer's eyes suddenly lit up. His peripheral vision saw the crowd looking towards the direction of the dragon's roar. A glint flashed past his eyes. Suddenly the wind from his palm moved as he struck a palm towards Yiqing Luo's face. Following that, his figure retreated backwards as he rushed towards the direction of White Teeth. Yiqing Luo's vision, although followed the dragon's roar and looked towards that direction. But her own perception and body's instinctive reaction. At the instance when the auctioneer struck, she had already dodged sideways. But the auctioneer had already escaped from her restraints. That White Teeth, who was originally shivering in the corner, had unknowingly raised its head up high. Its huge body began to roll and spin. Before the azure dragon appeared, White Fang did indeed have a trace of a dragon's majesty. However, at this moment, the azure dragon was a foil. Even if White Fang had such a huge body, there was no imposing manner to speak of. But in the eyes of the auctioneer, White Fang was their only hope. Yiqing Luo originally wanted to chase after him. But when his gaze touched a certain place, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. The expression on his face also became cold and solemn. When the crowd saw the auctioneer escape, they were eager to chase after him. But when he saw Yiqing Luo bringing the azure dragon, she returned back to Qiao Yinyan and the rest. They didn't understand the meaning of Yiqing Luo's action momentarily. It was during this moment of stupor. All of a sudden, a blood-curdling scream rang out. Everyone saw a scene that made their hair stand on end. The auctioneer, who had been running towards White Fang, stood rooted to the spot. Its huge white teeth bent down slightly and bit the auctioneer's head. Kacha! His head was bitten into White Fang's mouth. White Fang gave a long roar as it spiraled towards the horizon, stirring the dark clouds in the sky. Chapter 3704. That auctioneer whose head had been bitten off was still standing on the ground as his body kept swaying and his hands kept waving about. He staggered and swayed as he walked forward. There wasn't a single drop of blood on that body. His head had been bitten off by that monster and he was still alive and not bleeding? This was also a monster. Everyone's inner thoughts were in turmoil. They looked at the scene in front of them in shock and fear. On the other side, Yiqing Luo brought the azure dragon as she rushed to the side of Qiao Yinyan and the others. Bo Songyi, Pei Sheng and the others were all staring at the azure dragon. Their faces were filled with fear and trepidation. This was their first time seeing a dragon. And the first time they had such close contact with a dragon. Only Qiao Yinyan alone had a congealed expression as he wasn't attracted by the azure dragon at all. Instead he looked at Yiqing Luo and asked, "What's the matter?" Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she raised her head and looked towards a certain spot in the sky. "Look over there." Qiao Yinyan followed her gaze. Suddenly, his pupils dilated. What is that?" Their voices attracted Bo Songyi and Pei Sheng's attention. Pei Sheng's expression changed slightly when he saw the scene in the sky. Why is there a black hole above?" "Yes. Black hole." A small black hole was gradually enlarging. Bit by bit, it filled the entire sky of the auction. Evil cold yin qi spread across the sky. It was dark and oppressive, making people feel depressed. "What is that?" Qiao Yinyan looked at Yiqing Luo as he asked. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips. "If I didn't see wrongly, it might be an array." This array looked very familiar. Previously in the Nirvana realm, she had seen it before. She squinted her eyes slightly. The others also noticed the commotion on their side. When they saw that huge black hole in the sky, all of them cried out in shock. Just at this moment, that black hole suddenly expanded. Following that, one after another figures walked out from that black hole. It was as though heavenly soldiers and generals had descended from the sky. Wave after wave, they walked out of the black hole and into the auction hall. Rows after rows of people dressed in black robes, looking sinister and treacherous. Just as they walked into the auction, the crowd felt that in the air. There was a chill in the air. Even the air that he breathed in was a bone-chilling cold that made his hair stand on end. A teleportation array? Qiao Yinyan frowned in surprise. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. Yes. That black hole was indeed a teleportation formation. It was when they were in the Nirvana realm. The gloomy palace used this teleportation formation to send over batch after batch of semi-finished corpse puppets. Gloomy palace. Yiqing Luo's line of sight swept past those rows of figures. With a single glance, he saw 3 people floating at the side of the black hole. Her eyes darkened. Yu Ji, Yu Nu, and Yu Han. It really was them, after the last group of people walked out of the black hole. The black hole slowly disappeared in midair. Yiqing Luo gauged with her eyes. There were at least 200 people who had entered the auction. The 3 people from the Yu family stood at the back of the crowd, hiding their figures. Yiqing Luo also noticed. Standing at the very front of this batch of black-robed men he was also an acquaintance. That man apparently saw Yiqing Luo. A pair of malicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. He raised his hand and made a throat-slitting action. Chapter 3705. She opened her lips slightly as she exchanged glances with that person, Pharaoh He, long time no see. The person who stood in front of the crowd as the leader. He was the former Pharaoh group of the Dark Forces and the only survivor of the Dark Forces, Pharaoh He. So this was the Dark Forces team led by Pharaoh He? The sudden appearance of a group of black-robed men, and black-robed men who descended from the sky. This aroused the vigilance of various large forces cultivators. One look and you knew that they came with ill intentions. Especially those black-robed men, the evil qi which was emitting made one feel uncomfortable. The 2 executive elders' expressions changed slightly. They subconsciously looked towards Yiqing Luo. But they saw Yiqing Luo's expression was grave as she lowered her eyes and said something to Qiao Yinyan. The expression on her face was extremely solemn and complicated. The executive elder's heart skipped a beat. Executive Elder immediately leaned close to Yi Qing Luo. Miss D, those people. Who are they? You know them? I've crossed hands with them before. Yi Qing Luo replied calmly and raised her brows. Don't you guys know their identities? Executive Elder shook his head. Looked like the secluded palace had only developed their forces in Nirvana realm. The people in the Earth realm didn't know about the secluded palace. The secluded palace had suffered heavy losses in the battle in Nirvana realm. They still had the energy to set their sights on the Earth realm? How big of an obsession did they have with her? Who are they? Were they the ones who set up the array formation that sealed off the auction? That monster is theirs? Executive Elder asked with a pale face. Yi Qing Luo looked at the valiant and spirited Pharaoh He and nodded. The auctioneer should be a bait. These people are the appetizer. But the main course. She squinted her eyes slightly as her gaze swept past the crowd and landed on Three Nether. Her eyes darkened a little. Yi Qing Luo, I didn't expect to meet you here. As though she noticed Yi Qing Luo's gaze. Ghost Girl walked out from the crowd. She looked at Yi Qing Luo with a smile, but the haze between her brows was extremely obvious. Ghost Girl's voice broke the silence. Everyone looked toward Ghost Girl's line of sight at the same time. Yi Qing Luo? Who was Yi Qing Luo? But when everyone's vision was fixed on Yi Qing Luo, they were all stunned. Isn't this girl called Di Luo? However, looking at Misty's expression, it seemed as though the Yi Qing Luo, which was mentioned by that black-robed cold lady, was that Di Luo. Yu Nu continued to look at her with a smile. We're old friends, shouldn't you greet me? As soon as he said that, the crowd immediately burst into an uproar. Even Bo Songyi unconsciously led his 10 over mercenary brothers to retreat a few steps away from Yi Qing Luo. This group of black-robed men in front of him. It was obviously targeted at them. It was very likely that he was the instigator of the current situation. This bunch of people and that lady called Yi Qing Luo were old friends? Didn't that mean they were in cahoots? The crowd immediately thought of what Xiao Yulu had told them earlier. All these were planned by Yi Qing Luo. The white dragon was related to her. The ceiling formation was related to her. Was she deliberately allying with external forces to weaken the strength of the land? Seeing that everyone was already suspicious of Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 3706. Xiao Yulu pointed at Yi Qing Luo and laughed. What I said is right. She has ulterior motives. All these are orchestrated by her. As Xiao Yulu spoke, she walked out and pointed at Yi Qing Luo as she continued with a sneer. This person appeared out of thin air and advanced step by step, all for today's plot. Xiao Yulu's accusation made everyone even more suspicious of Yi Qing Luo. Seems like it's true. If she doesn't have a guilty conscience, why would she hide her name? Lie to us? Moreover, she obviously knows that group of people. That group of people could possibly be the force behind her. Intentionally trapping us here, what's her motive? All of us have been cheated by her. Someone asked Xiao Yinyan, eldest young master Qiao, I'm afraid even you don't know her real identity? She hid her name and lurked beside you, so she must be trying to make a move on you. I find it strange. I've clearly never heard of this woman before, so how did she suddenly become known to everyone in Without Embroiling City? All sorts of discussions were going on. The way they looked at Yi Qing Luo. They totally treated Yi Qing Luo and that group of black-robed men who descended from the sky as a group of people. At this time, these people had already experienced wave after wave of horror and then joy. Their minds had already suffered a serious blow. Listening to those discussions, Pei Xing's face turned red from anxiety. He opened his mouth and wanted to refute those people's words. But before he could open his mouth, he was suppressed by the questions that came from all directions. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. Her line of sight was still on Ghost Girl's face. Ghost Girl's victorious smile was still hanging on her face and had not faded. Apparently, Ghost Girl did it on purpose. 3 people make a tiger. As long as she incited everyone to not believe Yi Qing Luo's words, those gossips would be able to crush Yi Qing Luo. No matter how capable Yi Qing Luo was, there was absolutely no way to turn the tables in today's plan. At this juncture, no matter how Yi Qing Luo explained, no one would believe her. Even if Yi Qing Luo was really clean, she couldn't explain it. The more Yi Qing Luo explained, the more suspicious it would be. Yu Nu delightfully raised her lips, wanting to see Yi Qing Luo's flustered look. However, what she saw was that the young girl's expression did not change in the slightest. Nether girl. The girl's voice was clear and light. Her tone was calm and without any fluctuation. You're just a bunch of rats. Do you think you're worthy of calling me old friends? Don't try to climb up to me, Yi Qing Luo. Her tone was calm. However, the arrogance in his words was shocking. Even Ghost Maiden's expression changed. You're still quibbling. Xiao Yulu naturally refused to give Yi Qing Luo any chance to explain. Don't think that by saying this, you can make everyone believe you. Yi Qing Luo sneered as she retorted impolitely. Do you think that everyone is like you, a fool? You. Xiao Yulu gritted her teeth. Yi Qing Luo's smile gradually turned cold. Her eyes, which were like the first snow that had melted, swept past the crowd indifferently. Whether you believe me or not, or whatever thoughts you have, I don't care. I'll only say this once, if you want to leave this place alive, don't create trouble for me. Chapter 3707. The young lady's voice was clear and calm. His voice was indifferent, and not a hint of emotion could be heard from it. But there was an indescribable feeling of pressure from the bottom of one's heart. Obviously, they were being ridiculed and insulted. But on seeing the young lady's eyes, an icy cold glint revolved. Her chilly gaze swept past everyone's line of sight. Countless anger in their hearts were suppressed. But there was one person who was an exception. For example, what do you mean don't give you trouble? Di Luo. No, I should call you Yi Qing Luo now. You even hide your own name, how dare you talk big? Xiao Yulu's face flushed red, turning purple. Her gaze turned cold as she continued, from what I see, you are just putting on an act in order to let your plan go smoothly. A person like you, full of lies. Her voice paused as she looked at Xiao Yinyan. Brother, did you see that? This is the woman you have always believed in. She had been lying to you right from the start. She is. I know. Xiao Yinyan's clear voice interrupted Xiao Yulu's words. Xiao Yulu was stunned. You know, what? I know, her name is Yi Qing Luo. Xiao Yinyan's expression was calm as he replied calmly. Xiao Yulu's pupils suddenly widened. The meaning was, Yi Qing Luo didn't lie to him, nor did she hide her identity. No. Impossible. That woman was a liar. Xiao Yulu was shocked. Hearing this sentence, Yi Qing Luo also got a shock. What did Xiao Yinyan's words mean? Knew she was Yi Qing Luo? Was it to help her out of trouble? But even if she had doubts now, it wasn't a good time to ask. Yi Qing Luo only took a glance at Xiao Yulu. In her eyes, at best, Xiao Yulu was just a clown. What she was more concerned about was the reason why 3 Nether and the dark forces came to the Earth realm. The current Palace of Darkness should still be recuperating. But they dealt with the Earth realm in such an ostentatious manner, setting up such a huge game of chess. It was really hard for her not to think too much. TSK. Yi Qing Luo, you're really cruel. Yu Nu chuckled softly. In any case, we've fought a battle of life and death. We can be considered as people who have experienced life and death together. Do you really have the heart to treat me like this? Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't change. You're mistaken. It's me who one-sidedly tortured you, and it's also you who one-sidedly almost lost your life, so we can't be considered as people who have experienced life and death together. She paused, then continued, we're both women. Don't use your honey trap on me. Yu Nu sighed and glanced sideways at the two people beside her. That's why I said that I should have let you go from the start. This sentence of yours isn't right either. Yi Qing Luo continued to be indifferent. The both of them are too ugly. Using the beauty trap would only hurt the eyes. Ugly, ugly? Although the silence and coldness could not be considered as a peerless beauty. But it was definitely not ugly, right? Yu Ji and Yu Han's faces instantly darkened. The ghost girl covered her mouth and smiled delicately. However, her beautiful eyes were filled with an eerie coldness. She suddenly raised her hand. Her dark red nails seemed as though her hand was stained with fresh blood, which was strange and alluring. She laughed softly. Since you're so against being friends with me, then you can't blame us for disregarding our past relationship. The moment her hand straightened. Roar, a dragon's roar rang from the horizon. Chapter 3708. That white head coiled around Ghost Maiden's outstretched hand. Ghost Maiden saw the broken dragon horn on White Tooth's head. The expression on her face turned slightly cold. She raised her hand and caressed White Tooth's head. White Tooth gave a low howl, as though he was acting coquettishly. This scene made everyone understand what was going on. This monster, it wasn't the auctioneer's battle pet. It was the lady named Ghost Maiden's battle pet. Who were they? Everyone shifted their gaze towards Yi Qing Luo. They were still hesitating about Yi Qing Luo's relationship with those people. Everyone, don't be deceived by their tricks. Executive Elder cleared his throat. No matter what Miss Yi Qing Luo's name is. But I firmly believe, and dare to use my reputation as Executive Elder to guarantee that she absolutely has no intention to harm anyone. On the contrary, the other party time and time again, trying to create public opinion to break down our trust towards Miss Yi Qing Luo, but it made me believe in Miss Yi Qing Luo even more. Executive Elder had been the closest to Yi Qing Luo. The both of them could hear Yi Qing Luo's conversation with the people beside her. From Yi Qing Luo's performance from the start. And the conversation with Xiao Yinyan and the rest. Adding on to the fact that when the monster attacked everyone earlier, she blocked it and summoned the green dragon to suppress that monster. Whether a person was innocent. When a person does something, does he or she have another goal in mind? No matter how good the disguise was, there would still be flaws. Executive Elder believed that Yi Qing Luo and the other party were absolutely not accomplices. Executive Elder's words made everyone's wavering hearts start to float again. Xiao Yulu was so angry that she almost bit her teeth off. Why did someone always stand on that slut's side? She was obviously without embroiling city's mysterious maiden. She was the one with the most distinguished status. A bunch of ignorant people. Xiao Yulu clenched her fists tightly, the back of her slender hands were covered with green veins. Her bloodshot eyes were filled with jealousy as she looked towards the direction of Ghost Maiden and the rest. In her heart, a decision was slowly formed. Perhaps she felt Xiao Yulu's gaze. That Ghost Maiden who was caressing her white teeth curled her lips as she laughed sinisterly. On the account that everyone wants to leave the auction, I shall give everyone a chance to leave. Everyone immediately looked at her. Netherworld Girl curled her lips and spoke in a gentle voice that was filled with bewitchment. Join our Palace of Darkness. As long as you leave your current forces and join the Palace of Darkness, you will be able to leave the auction. Serene Girl's words caused the crowd's expression to freeze. Yi Qing Luo's eyes dimmed as her slender brows creased tightly as she looked at Spectral Girl. She was trying to poach him. Was there anyone who would poach someone so openly? Moreover, he was able to participate in the annual auction. Which one of them didn't come from a famous force? Most of them might not have heard of Gloomy Palace. Let them break away from their current power. Join a force that I've never heard of? And using such a despicable method. Anyone with a bit of backbone wouldn't listen to him. I'll join. Just as everyone was expressing their unyielding spirit in their hearts, a voice suddenly rang out. A clear voice suddenly rang out. He looked in the direction of the voice. Everyone saw Xiao Yulu flying in the direction of the ghost girl. Chapter 3709. The crowd was in an uproar. How did this palace of darkness appear? Why haven't I heard of it before? The Empyrean lady of Without Embroiling City gave up her status as the Empyrean lady and joined the palace of gloomy darkness. Not only is she the Empyrean fairy of Without Embroiling City, but she's also the first young miss of Without Embroiling City's Qiao family. Is she really going to give up all of that? Did you see how close that monster was to them? This means that the reason we're trapped in the auction is because of them. They want our lives and want us to join their *T dark palace. Pooh. Just now, because of White Fang's savagery, the scene of it devouring a large number of profound practitioners. This group of people was the culprit behind everything. How could the crowd give them any face? However, just as everyone was talking about it, there was no hesitation in Xiao Yulu's footsteps. Ha ha ha. Empyrean maiden, I'll prove that you've made the right choice. The dark woman curled her red lips tenderly and hooked her finger at Xiao Yulu. It looked as if it was summoning its little pet. However, Xiao Yulu stepped forward obediently. She stared at Yunu and said word by word, my only condition for joining the Palace of Gloomy Darkness is, I want to kill that woman with my own hands. No problem, Yunu answered straightforwardly. The corners of Xiao Yulu's mouth curled up into a sinister sneer. It could be seen that this group of people was extremely powerful. Now the executive elder had already stood on Yiqing Luo's side. Whatever she said was of no use. Moreover, sooner or later, someone would find out that this dragon egg was indeed brought to the auction house by her. She had been used by this so-called Palace of Gloomy Darkness. This also meant that she was already black. Joining the Gloomy Palace was her only option. The only one, the way to survive and kill Yiqing Luo with his own hands. Because she and the Palace of Gloomy Darkness had a common enemy. What about you guys? Those who want to join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness should hurry up, there will be a limit to the number of people who can join. Yunu looked at the crowd with a smile. The feminine voice was filled with a chill that made one's body tremble. Everyone snorted disdainfully. Evidently, they didn't take you seriously at all. From the looks of it, all of you don't want to leave this place. All of you want to become White Fang's food. Yunu wasn't angry. She gently stroked her lips with her dark red fingers and said with a smile, then don't blame the Palace of Darkness for not giving you a chance to live. The executive elder's face darkened as he listened to Ghost Girl's arrogant words. He took a look at the calm-looking Yiqing Luo and subsequently looked at Yunu, cruel and bloody, indiscriminately killing the innocent heretical sect. You still want to instigate us. What's your goal? Aren't you afraid that we'll join forces with our families to deal with you after we leave the auction? In the eyes of the executive elder and the profound practitioners of the various forces, this so-called Palace of Gloomy Darkness was just a new small force. The dark woman chuckled when she heard this. Jiao Jiao's gentle laughter was accompanied by a trace of sinister treachery. That's if you can walk out of the auction alive, isn't it? She met the executive elder's gaze as she gave a tender smile, but those who are unwilling to join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness can only die here, forever unable to walk out of the auction. That arrogant words and ridiculing attitude made everyone's heart surge with rage. You don't believe me? Then let's kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Yunu's fingers caressed White Fang by the side of her body. As her voice fell, White Fang roared as it spiraled and surged. Chapter 3710. The other party's arrogant attitude made all the cultivators' faces turn black. Executive Elder A took the opportunity to shout out sternly, the other party only has 200 over people and we have hundreds of people, don't tell me we can't defeat them. As long as we kill them, we will definitely be able to break out of the array. Executive Elder B looked towards Yiqing Luo, D. Miss Yi, that monster, I'll have to trouble you and Master Long. As he said that, he looked respectfully at Azure Dragon. No matter what profound grade they sensed from Yiqing Luo, to be able to subdue a dragon beast as her own battle pet, her ability was definitely not to be underestimated. The strong deserved their respect. Yi Qing Luo took a look at that white fang which was originally trembling under Azure Dragon suppression, as it started to bare its fangs and claws again. She pursed her lips and said, "That monster, Azure Dragon, and I can settle it, but those black-robed men, don't belittle them. They are the same as that monster." Yi Qing Luo hadn't finished her words. Suddenly, they heard a mournful shriek reverberating through the sky. Under Executive Elder A's call, many powerhouses cultivators moved together. But there were a few cultivators who totally didn't put the black-robed men in their eyes. They directly bypassed the group and charged towards the black-robed men, wanting to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. But they had not expected. The weapon in their hands had slashed the black-robed man's waist into two. That black-robed man who was left with only a section of his body could still use his bones as a weapon, piercing into their hearts. The scene was shocking. Just like how the auctioneer's head was bitten off, but his body was still able to move. These black-robed men, even if their limbs were separated from their bodies, they could still continue to attack. This was simply a bunch of monsters. Those cultivators who took the lead to charge up were all annihilated in a split second. After that, the various powerhouses cultivators who followed Executive Elder's call were so shocked that they stopped in their tracks, standing stiffly on the spot, their faces filled with terror as they looked at the shocking scene. Even Executive Elder A was stunned on the spot. "Ha ha ha. Still want to resist? No way, none of you can escape. My group of puppets are immortal." Yu Nu looked at the terror on everyone's faces with satisfaction. She laughed delightfully. She was extremely complacent as she raised her slender eyebrows towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. "My little white fangs, go, these are all your food." Ghost Woman stroked the white fangs that were writhing in the sky and issued an order. White Fang roared, and rushed towards those profound practitioners who were frozen in place. He opened his mouth and rushed towards them. The black-robed men did not stop their attacks. Powerful air currents were released from their bodies, which condensed into blades and frantically attacked the people in front of them. "Ah, help! Monster! They are all monsters. These are all monsters." The profound practitioners who were originally filled with confidence to kill all of these people before them were now fleeing in all directions in fright. However, their speed simply couldn't compare to White Fang and the black-robed men. Those who don't can only die. If you want to live, join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. Ghost Girl's light and spirited laughter bewitched all the profound practitioners present. "We can also modify all of you to become like these puppets of mine. We can give all of you bodies that are impervious to all weapons and impervious to fire and water." The blood of the profound practitioners dyed the ground red. As his white teeth moved, he swallowed a profound practitioner into his stomach. Dark clouds rolled, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. Chapter 37:11. Yi, Miss Yi. Executive Elder Old B's face turned pale as he called out Yi Qing Luo's name in a trembling voice. That bunch of monsters. There was no way to deal with them. Even if they had the numbers and were willing to unite. But there was no way they could defeat those undying monsters. Their attacks towards that bunch of monsters were totally unable to cause any damage at all. What should they do? Executive Elder subconsciously placed all his hopes on Yi Qing Luo. The scene in front of her made Yi Qing Luo's pupils turn wretched. Her long and narrow eyes slowly filled with an austere cold intent. Her pitch-black pupils seemed to be covered with frost. Her slender brows creased tightly. She had not expected Yu Nu to make a move just like that. Moreover, it was done in such a straightforward manner, totally not giving these people any chance to hesitate at all. From the looks of it, they really intended to capture all the various powerhouses elites from the various main cities in the Earth domain in one fell swoop. If this carried on, it was merely the time for half an incense stick to burn. The people here would be forced to death by this atmosphere first. Yi Qing Luo's eyes narrowed as a burst of fiery profound energy shot out from her fingertips. Just as the profound energy charged into midair. In an instant, like a volcano eruption, it exploded with a loud bang. Immediately following that, the sky was filled with fire clouds as intense chi waves circulated in the air, blocking the surging white fangs and black-robed men. Yu Nu's brows rose. Seeing Yi Qing Luo making a move, her feminine lips curled upwards as she laughed. Yi Qing Luo, do you think you can stop me? Following her ending words, Yu Nu raised her hand as her palm landed on Xiao Yulu's shoulder. Xiao Yulu cried out miserably as she spat out a large mouthful of blood. Immediately following that, boundless Yin Qi entered Xiao Yulu's body. Xiao Yulu's body kept twisting and struggling under the black qi as she cried out miserably in pain. Immediately following that, when Xiao Yulu absorbed all the Yin Qi into her body, Yu Nu's palm pushed Xiao Yulu towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Since you want to join secluded palace, then show your sincerity. Xiao Yulu's body was like an arrow that had left the bow as it shot towards Yi Qing Luo. Right in front of him was a violent surge of profound energy mixed with a yin energy that caused one's entire body to tremble. Yi Qing Luo commanded Azure Dragon to stop White Fang's fake dragon from continuing to devour humans. Then, he faced Xiao Yulu's attack and directly counterattacked. The two forces collided. An explosive sound suddenly erupted in the air. In all directions, the air waves of profound strength were set off, like rolling waves. The surging air waves were like sharp blades, cutting across the skin on his face. Yi Qing Luo's expression was calm as she fiercely passed through the surging qi waves. As his profound energy surged, the gourd flame fan in his hands had already shot out a strong profound energy. Oh! Xiao Yulu was hit in the chest by the wind blade. She let out a muffled groan as her body flew backward. Yi Qing Luo closed her glower flame fan as her gaze swept towards the direction of Azure Dragon. Under Azure Dragon's attack, White Fang was no longer as ostentatious as before. His entire body was cut into pieces by the Azure Dragon's sharp claws. White Fang, on the other hand, seemed to know no exhaustion and continued to tangle with the Azure Dragon without hesitation. It seemed like the Azure Dragon had the upper hand. But, somehow, something felt amiss. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased into a bundle as she stared deadly at the Azure Dragon. She was about to head towards the Azure Dragon's side to settle White Fang first. But she was blocked by a gust of strong wind. Di Luo, no, Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 37:12. Motherf asterisk Ker. Yi Qing Luo's heart was about to explode. Wasn't this girl annoying? Yi Qing Luo took a step back to avoid Xiao Yulu's attack. Xiao Yulu, you've been used by them once or twice, haven't you learnt your lesson? Do you really think that you'll be able to survive after they've wiped out all the profound practitioners from the various powers? I don't know if you can survive or not, but what I can confirm is that you will definitely die. Xiao Yulu pressed on. On that beautiful face, her eyelashes cast a black arc under her eyes. Wisps of black aura, like ink, spread out in her eyes. It made her look extremely gloomy. This was the sign of Yin Qi entering the body. Yi Qing Luo frowned. This Xiao Yulu's hatred towards her was a little scary. In order to kill her, she didn't hesitate to abandon her identity as mysterious maiden and chose to join the secluded palace, willingly to be used by others. Yi Qing Luo really didn't understand which class this thinking was for. Anyway, she felt that Xiao Yulu could no longer be described with the words silly or stupid. Otherwise, it would be an insult to these words. Yi Qing Luo was entangled by Xiao Yulu. The black-robed man's attack didn't stop. Xiao Yimian looked at the horizon, at the two figures fighting. And that bloody and horrifying scene around them. His expression was cold as he pursed his lips and looked at Pei Sheng. The situation is critical now. I'm afraid it's not realistic to rely on Ah Luo alone. We can't stand by and watch anymore. Follow me closely. Ah Luo She won't. Pei Sheng's pupils contracted, his hands clenched into fists as he asked worriedly. Xiao Yimian took a look at the apparently crazy Xiao Yulu, his face sunk. Ah Luo's ability is far beyond our imagination. What we need to do now is to protect ourselves, not to be a burden to her. Those monsters, other than Yi Qing Luo's weapon. These people were unable to deal with those monsters. They couldn't resist. Which meant that they could only passively accept those monsters' attacks. If this went on, even if they had the advantage in numbers, they would immediately be at a disadvantage. Gather everyone and work together. The executive elder and Xiao Yinyan thought of the same thing. In order to prevent more profound practitioners from being sacrificed, they had to take relative measures. Even if he couldn't deal with those monsters, at the very least, he had to stop them from committing murder. Yes. No matter what, we have to control our casualties first. There are a few hundred of us. Why should we be afraid of these monsters? We are elites from the various major cities and major factions. I can't die here. We can't let these monsters achieve their goal. Everyone's eyes were burning with passion. One by one, they released their dark force, fighting with their lives to suppress the other party. The dazzling dark force was extremely eye-catching in the midst of Yin Qi. The surging waves of dark force enveloped the entire auction. With order, delaying the monsters. The rate of casualties had indeed slowed down a lot. Both sides refused to back down and continued to resist the monsters' attacks. The dark force that filled the sky intertwined with the cause field. Under the saber light and sword shadow, the imposing manner was majestic like a rainbow. After Yi Qing Luo and Xiao Yulu crossed hands for more than 10 rounds, her expression sunk as she took a few steps back. He didn't know if it was an illusion. Xiao Yulu's current state was that the more she fought, the braver she became. As though she didn't know pain and exhaustion. The current Xiao Yulu should still be in a human body and had not gone through the transformation of a corpse puppet. Chapter 37:13. She originally wanted to settle Xiao Yulu quickly. Then to help Azure Dragon settle that white-tooth monster. The array that was set up around the auction. Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel the dense Yin Qi coming from all directions. If they stayed in this array for a period of time, it would have a huge impact on them. There was a possibility that it might even weaken their powers, causing the Yin Qi to enter their bodies. In Nirvana Realm's Nether Palace's territory, when Yi Qing Luo was sealed in the palace by the mastermind, her body was almost corroded by the Nether Palace's Yin Qi. If her willpower was weak, there was a possibility that she would become Nether Palace's puppet, controlled by them. What was even more unfortunate was that her body and mind were swallowed by the Yin Qi directly. Like Xiao Yulu. Obviously after the Yin Qi entered her body, she had lost her own rationality. But Xiao Yulu's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer as she fought. It really made Yi Qing Luo shocked. Somehow, she seemed to have forgotten something. Just like she felt that Xiao Yulu's attacks looked as though she was trying her best to kill her. But Yi Qing Luo had an ominous premonition in her heart. As though Nether Palace had specially made use of Xiao Yulu to delay her time. Wait a minute. Delay time? Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. The expression on her face congealed. Her deep and enchanting eyes looked in the direction of the Azure Dragon in shock. Azure Dragon. Her throat was only able to spit out 2 words. But the scene in front of her silenced all her voices. Black chi filled the air, as though a thick fog had dyed the sky. That imitation white dragon monster, under Azure Dragon's tearing, its huge, dragon body, had already broken into pieces. But White Fang, who was supporting his broken body, emitted a dense black aura, mixed with the rolling dark clouds and lightning. Layers and layers of it entangled Azure Dragon. White Tooth's injuries were more serious. The surrounding black chi became thicker and deeper. It could be said the Azure Dragon was completely bound by this mass of black chi. This was White Tooth's motive. Yi Qing Luo finally understood. Earlier when Azure Dragon obviously had the upper hand, Why was her heart beating so fast? At the time, she did not realize this. Damn it! How dare they plot against Azure Dragon? Yiqing Luo's charming eyes were filled with a chilly killing intent. Powerful and thick profound energy surged out from his body. Her fingertips twitched. The devouring flame fan in his hand unleashed a powerful pressure. It kicked up a huge hurricane and headed straight for the Azure Dragon. Yiqing Luo. Xiao Yulu gave a cold harumph, as she once again entangled Yiqing Luo crazily. Yiqing Luo's entire mind was occupied by the green dragon. Without any hesitation, she waved her palm and shot out a stream of profound qi. The surrounding air waves surged and twisted. It formed an invisible wave that forced Xiao Yulu back. Yiqing Luo leapt up and charged towards the green dragon. Don't come any closer. The Azure Dragon's hoarse voice rang out in his mind. His voice was filled with suppressed pain. How could it not be painful? The Azure Dragon was the leader of the 4 great sacred beasts, a righteous sacred beast. He had just woken up not long ago, and because he had formed a blood contract with her, his strength had yet to recover. Furthermore, he was suppressed by the realm and the contract. While he was being entangled by White Tooth's evil qi. It was as if its soul and psychic power were being entangled by the evil energy. Father. Shiju couldn't sit still in the pet space. Chapter 37:14. Yiqing Luo knitted her brows tightly. She understood Azure Dragon's meaning. White Fang was specially used by Nether Palace to plot against Azure Dragon. It was intentionally used to bait her. If she went over rashly, that would be in line with Nether Palace's intentions. But to just leave Azure Dragon like that? How could she possibly do it? Yiqing Luo, do you despise me so much? How dare you be distracted? She heard Xiao Yulu's haunting voice ringing in her ears. Mixed with it was an attack filled with murderous intent. Yiqing Luo was feeling frustrated. Anger surged in her heart. There was also a vicious killing intent spreading in his chest. She frowned as her fingertips flipped. The glower flame fan in her hands opened up, drawing a biting cold wind blade arc, clashing against Xiao Yulu's attack. She pursed her lips, as her eyes gradually turned red. Bam bam bam. A deafening explosion resounded. As the profound energy clashed, the surrounding buildings were all blasted into pieces, as rubble flew everywhere. Xiao Yulu was struck right in the middle, as she flew backwards. Her soft body crashed heavily onto a building. Blood spurted out from her mouth. Xiao Yulu cried out miserably, as she fell onto the ground. Her internal organs seemed as though they were about to gush out from her mouth. This scene made Yiqing Luo subconsciously raised her hand and pressed against her own chest. The redness under her eyes deepened. She knew that this was the sign of evil qi entering the body. This evil qi was interfering with her emotions. The more easily angered, the more frustrated she was. The more evil qi could seep into one's heart. Yiqing Luo's eyes darkened, as she took a deep breath, suppressing the various emotions in her heart. Her figure flashed, as she speedily headed towards Azure Dragon's direction. Profound energy burst forth, as the glower flame fan on her fingertips was also burning with raging flames. The alluring red glow instantly covered that patch of black qi which was emitted from the white fang. Black and red intertwined. Like the black smoke, as cold blood seeped out. Azure Dragon didn't expect Yiqing Luo to rush over. An indescribable feeling arose in its heart. Yiqing Luo's eyes darkened, as her long and narrow eyes outlined a seductive cold arc, appearing extremely evil. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, and her red clothes fluttered. The profound energy in her entire body surged even more violently. His entire person was like a blood-colored firework, blooming bit by bit. Since you have signed a contract with me, you are my companion. How can I just watch my comrade fight alone? The girl's sonorous voice was firm and without the slightest hesitation. Then, the dazzling dark light around the young girl suddenly blossomed with a whoosh. In an instant, the azure dragon and White Fang were completely covered. Roar, White Fang roared in pain. Under the pain, his broken body kept twitching and twisting. Even the dense black aura was devoured by the waves of raging flames. This scene caused the expression of Sanyu, who was originally watching by the side, to darken. Yuji frowned. White Fang was in the first batch of battle pets. Her weapon shouldn't have been able to kill White Fang. She can even purify. White Fang's evil Yin Qi. Yunu's eyes widened in shock. Yuhan hugged Yunu's slender waist tightly, as her expression was icy cold. This is different from the results of the investigation. We must start from her weapon. Wait. Yunu suddenly covered her mouth, as she cried out in shock, "Look at her weapon." Yuji and Yuhan immediately looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw the sky full of black fog, and under the red glow. Chapter 37:15. A flickering light aura flashed on the glowing flame fan. The surging profound energy lingered on the gourd flame fan. It caused her figure that was red like the blazing sun to seem like a pure and elegant poppy. Countless wind blades circled around the girl's body in a frenzy. Her weapon evolved. An evolvable artifact? Triple Nether exclaimed in astonishment. They had not expected that the glower flame fan in Yiqing Luo's hands could actually evolve at this juncture. The evolution of the weapon was equivalent to the evolution of the whole body. Even the mental energy within the gourd flame fan, which had been refined with the divine power of the netherworld, had evolved. Therefore, when dealing with a battle pet like White Fang, the evolved spirit would cover up White Fang's own evil aura. Yunu's beautiful eyes dimmed a little. She bit her red lips with a trace of resentment in her eyes. That slut, she was really damn lucky. At a time like this, her weapon could still evolve. However, Dark Girl's eyes gradually darkened. A faint black aura leaked out from between his brows. So what if it evolved? Today, they had made all the necessary preparations. He would definitely get rid of that slut here. On the other side, Yiqing Luo had also sensed the surging energy from the glower flame fan. She quickly dispersed the black fog that enveloped the azure dragon and slashed a wind blade at White Fang. White Fang roared and tried to break free. But Yiqing Luo's attacks were swift and fierce. White Fang was cut in half at the waist. After the dragon's head was separated from its body, it fell limply to the ground. The two parts of its huge body kept wriggling. However, he was unable to reconnect the two halves of his body. The black mist slowly dispersed. The azure dragon's slightly tired head was revealed. Yiqing Luo looked towards Xiao Yulu's direction. Xiao Yulu was lying on the spot where she had fallen, her body arched as if she was in so much pain that she couldn't stand up. She retracted her gaze and sped up to purify the evil aura around the azure dragon. "Father." Suddenly, the clear voice of a child rang in his ears. Yiqing Luo felt a tightness in her chest. Shiju actually forcefully scurried out from the pet space. The palm-sized ball pounced towards the azure dragon. "Shiju! Come back! Jean, don't come over!" Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened as she cried out anxiously. The azure dragon's voice rang out. But it was too late for Yiqing Luo to stop him. Thick black fog covered Shiju's body in a split second. The dragon head that was originally lying on the ground and ceaselessly curled up suddenly leaped up and opened its mouth to swallow Shiju into its stomach. "Shiju-a!" Yiqing Luo's hand caught empty air. With a backhand punch, she heavily smashed White Fang's head. White Fang's head smashed onto the ground and bounced a few times. "Spit out Shiju!" Yiqing Luo stepped on Bai Ya's head as she shouted sternly. White Tooth played dead. "Jean, Azure Dragon was flustered, and his eyes widened. The black mist around its body also surged wildly due to the change in its mood. The azure dragon immediately let out a muffled groan as it was entangled. Its whiskers shook, and its green dragon scales turned into streaks of light. It desperately tried to break free from the entanglement of the evil Yin energy. Yi Qing Luo comforted the azure dragon in her heart. Her long and narrow eyes were suffused with an icy chill. She stepped hard on by Ye's head a few times. Yi Qing Luo, if you don't listen to me obediently, the sword will not have eyes. Just at this moment, a soft voice was transmitted into Yi Qing Luo's ears. There was an obvious sense of pride in that voice. Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled. Chapter 37:16. Among the black-robed men, the leader held a man in his hand and a sharp blade was pressed against the man's neck. The man's handsome face was steely green as his eyes were filled with anger. After meeting Yi Qing Luo's gaze, he instantly turned guilty. Ah Sheng. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted as she looked at the man who was restrained and called out softly. I'm sorry. Pei Sheng apologized softly. This bunch of black-robed men were simply too sinister. Earlier when Shi Ju appeared and was swallowed by White Tooth, it made him place all his attention on Yi Qing Luo. Momentarily, he neglected the approaching pharaoh his own mistake. He actually became Ah Luo's burden. Pei Sheng did not feel good in his heart. Pharaoh he chose him as a tool to threaten Ah Luo. It was because he was too weak. If he was slightly stronger, the other party wouldn't have this chance. He wouldn't become Ah Luo's burden. The more he thought, the more guilty Pei Sheng felt. TSK. Pharaoh he laughed coldly, Yi Qing Luo, so what if your luck is good? Your only shortcoming is that you're too soft-hearted. I want to see if your life is more important or your little brother's life is more important. As Pharaoh he said that, he held Pei Sheng's neck tightly. His face was filled with a complacent smile. Pei Sheng's features contorted in pain as he tried to struggle but was trapped even tighter. Yi Qing Luo's eyes darkened. Her slender fingers clenched into a fist as her brows overflowed with a chilly intent. Despicable. Pharaoh actually used Pei Sheng to threaten her. Don't bother about me. Ah Luo, don't bother. Ah! Pei Sheng screamed. Suddenly, Pharaoh he's blade grazed Pei Sheng's neck. Pei Sheng drew in a cold breath from the pain as he grimaced in pain, unable to open his mouth. Yi Qing Luo's eyes darkened as she stared coldly at Pharaoh you'd better control your hand. If you hurt him again, you can try to see if you can still use him to threaten me. Pharaoh he's hand trembled as the expression on his face turned stiff. He suppressed the fear in his heart as he shouted at Yi Qing Luo, stand aside obediently. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were gloomy as she clenched her fingers tightly. His knuckles were pale from the strength of his grip. Roar! The azure dragon gradually revealed itself in the black fog. He opened his eyes wide and stared at White Fang's head, his dragon breath surging. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo was in a dilemma. On the other side was Pei Sheng. On one side was Shi Ju. If she didn't move, what would happen to Shi Ju after it was swallowed by White Fang? White Fang's body was filled with evil energy. Could Shi Ju's small body withstand it? If they moved, Pharaoh he would definitely not hesitate to take Pei Sheng's life. Since she had promised to help Pei Sheng, she would definitely help him to the end. If Pei Sheng lost his life because of this, she would feel guilty. Also, the profounders from the various powers in the surroundings. They were all waiting for a chance to leave the auction. What to do? Yi Qing Luo's complexion was pale and her tightly pursed pink lips were trembling slightly. Ah Luo, behind you. Suddenly, he heard Xiao Yinyan's panicked voice. There were a few figures who were rushing towards her at high speed. Yi Qing Luo's brows twitched as she was just about to move. But Yu laughed faintly, be obedient and don't move. If you alarm Pharaoh he and his hand trembles. That would be bad. Chapter 37:17. Too light and in different sentences. It made Yiqing Luo's body, which wanted to dodge, suddenly froze. In the next instant, a ferocious gust of wind from a palm landed heavily on her back. Yiqing Luo only felt a wave of intense pain as her internal organs churned. Her body staggered a few steps forward. Blood spilled out from the corner of her mouth. She coughed violently as she covered her mouth. Ah Luo. Di Fu. Miss D. Miss Yi. The surrounding crowd cried out in shock. Ha ha ha. Yiqing Luo, you're just a so-so. While the crowd was worried, they were discussing in whispers. Xiao Yulu's voice was very obvious. Xiao Yulu looked complacently at Yiqing Luo, who was spitting out blood as she finally felt much better. What a ridiculous brotherly relationship. Since you want to use your life to exchange for that trash's life, then I shall fulfill your wish. Xiao Yulu sneered as her lips twitched. Following that, she flipped her palm and attacked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Her attack was extremely fast, totally not giving Yiqing Luo any chance to breathe. Yiqing Luo clutched her chest as it was in extreme pain. Even the slightest movement of his body would cause his internal organs to feel a sharp pain as if they were being torn apart. Xiao Yulu's attack made her face turn paler. She couldn't dodge. She couldn't resist. Was Yunu doing this on purpose, trying to torture her in this way? Seeing Xiao Yulu's attack getting closer, the worried growls and Yunu's complacent voice continued, "None of you move. Whoever dares to stop me, this lad is dead." When Xiao Yinyan and the rest heard this, they wanted to go up to stop her, but they were all rooted to the ground as their eyes were filled with hesitation. F***K. I don't care if he dies or not. You bunch of trash, how dare you touch my people, I will skin you alive. Old Lai didn't have the patience to think so much. He was only concerned about Yiqing Luo alone. Gathering treasures and being amiable, that was on account of Yiqing Luo. Especially now, that bunch of people from secluded palace were old enemies. Seeing them, Old Lai had the intention to kill them. How could he possibly calm down? Old Lai's rage only lasted for a short moment. The biting cold profound energy which Xiao Yulu was brewing had already attacked towards Yiqing Luo's face. Pei Xing's pupils constricted. Suddenly, an extremely dazzling golden light erupted from his eyes. He stared at Yiqing Luo's direction. There seemed to be some kind of anger in his heart that kept surging. It was all because of him. It was all because of him. Ah Luo was threatened by others. Ah Luo was injured. Obviously, they wanted to use this method to torture Ah Luo. He could not stand by and watch Ah Luo get injured because of her. Ah Luo had sacrificed so much for him. He couldn't become Ah Luo's burden. You, all of you, deserve to die. From Pei Xing's throat came a roar that sounded like that of a trapped beast. His voice was hoarse, making it hard to hear what he was saying. Pharaoh Crane only felt that the suppressed man's aura suddenly rose. He didn't take it to heart. He just moved the sword closer to the man's neck. However, as soon as he moved, a bam sound was heard. The man's body suddenly exploded with a surge of raging energy. The thick, profound energy was like a spider web as it spread in the air. The majestic and powerful energy swept up a slight hurricane. Bam! Pharaoh Crane's body was suddenly repelled by the sudden burst of profound energy. Chapter 37:18. His entire body was emitting a dense, profound light. The surrounding black-robed men and Pharaoh he were all injured by that profound ray. What's going on? Pharaoh he's body was sent flying and with a somersault in mid-air, he crashed onto a building. He clutched his chest as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Wasn't that lad without the strength to even truss a chicken? How did he suddenly become so powerful? It was really uncanny. The commotion over here made Three Nether's expression turn extremely cold and solemn. Ghost Girl's reaction was extremely fast. The moment she sensed the change in Pei Xing's aura, Her cold and gloomy eyes were filled with an eerie chill. Following that, she was like an arrow leaving the bow as she charged towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. And on Yi Qing Luo's side, indeed. At the moment when Pei Xing resisted, Yi Qing Luo swiftly flipped her hand as she clasped her wrist, which was attacking towards her face. Tightly, her 5 fingers clenched tightly. A "kacha" sound was heard. Xiao Yulu's wrist broke in response. Yi Qing Luo's speed was extremely fast. It was almost in a blink of an eye. After Pei Xing broke free from the restraint, her entire body started to revolve, a majestic profound energy which contained an earth-shattering energy, stirring up the surrounding air as layers of clear and crystalline qi waves appeared, swiftly counterattacking towards Xiao Yulu. Xiao Yulu's face turned pale as black qi filled the space between her brows, as though her entire face was shrouded in black qi. It made her face, which was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as jade, look sinister and treacherous. Yi Qing Luo's counterattack made Xiao Yulu's complacent expression freeze on her face. Without Pharaoh he making use of Pei Xing to balance Yi Qing Luo. She was totally not Yi Qing Luo's opponent, who was in a rage. Suddenly, Xiao Yulu's eyes flashed as she saw a certain spot. Her pupils, which were filled with black qi, suddenly surged with waves after waves of turbulent evil qi. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes suddenly grew longer, as though she had reacted to something. She swiftly turned sideways. But no matter how fast her reaction was, she was still a step too late. That sinister sneer on Ghost Girl's face was already nearing. At the instance when she turned sideways, Xiao Yulu also received Yunu's signal and raised her hand to attack Yi Qing Luo. One at the front and one at the back, the 2 sides attacked from both sides. Yi Qing Luo had nowhere to hide. Yunu's red lips curled into a perfect arc as she gave a tender smile. Yi Qing Luo, you're still defeated in my hands after all. Her voice was soft and gentle. However, his attacks were so swift and fierce that it caused people's hearts to tremble. An earth-shattering momentum exploded in the air. Yi Qing Luo only felt a bone-piercing chill rising from her spine. Her mind worked quickly. It was too late for him to use his footwork to escape. All she could do was, he dodged one attack and endured the other. If she had to choose, she would definitely choose to avoid Yunu's attack. However, she had just been hit by Xiao Yulu's palm wind, and her internal organs were still in a damaged state. If he took another palm strike, I'm afraid her 5 viscera and 6 bowels would rupture. Both of them were as fast as lightning, totally not giving Yi Qing Luo any time to think. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. She pursed her lips tightly and could only choose the most beneficial method for herself. Old man Sung, protect my heart. Yi Qing Luo said this in her heart. Her body had already swiftly turned towards Yunu, meeting against Yunu's attack. Yi Qing Luo's back was exposed in front of Xiao Yulu. Xiao Yulu's eyes flashed past a gloomy smile. But just as Xiao Yulu used all her strength to take Yi Qing Luo's life, suddenly, a gust of gloomy cold wind fluttered and enveloped her palm. Chapter 37:19. No. It wasn't just a surge of energy. Xiao Yulu sensed in horror that when the cold wind blew over, and a majestic and vigorous energy was rapidly approaching. Violent howling. Xiao Yulu could even see the entrance to hell opening up towards her. No. She didn't want to die. Xiao Yulu was terrified. She wanted to retract her hands, which had already attacked. However, the coldness seemed to have frozen her hands and body, making her unable to move at all. At this moment, Xiao Yulu finally understood earlier, Yi Qing Luo knew that danger was approaching. But she could only stand on the spot, passively waiting for the pain to descend. The only difference was, Yi Qing Luo was being coerced, standing there to suffer without any resistance. Whereas she wanted to hide, but had no strength to hide. A miserable shriek came out from Xiao Yulu's mouth. Xiao Yulu's body suddenly flew backwards, crashing heavily onto the ground. She could even hear the sound of her bones breaking when her body crashed onto the ground. Xiao Yulu's entire face was twisted. Her wide-opened eyes were filled with unconcealable fear. Xiao Yulu was overwhelmed with shock. But someone's heart skipped a beat, as various emotions of sweetness and astonishment spread in her heart. After asking Old Man Song to protect her heart meridians, Yiqing Luo originally wanted to forcefully receive Xiao Yulu's attack. However, at the most critical moment, she only felt her waist suddenly tightened. Tightly. A strong and powerful force tightly hugged her waist. Both her feet were in the air, as she was brought into a warm embrace. The elegant sandalwood fragrance seeped into her nostrils. It instantly soothed the restlessness and uneasiness in her heart. Yiqing Luo's heart was instantly lifted. Even her charming eyes were slightly opened in disbelief. It's you. She heard Ghost Girl's panicked voice. Following that was the sound of Ghost Girl escaping in the direction of the other two nethers. Yiqing Luo was buried in that person's embrace, so she couldn't see the situation. But she could clearly hear the sound of the air ripple in the air. The sound of Ghost Girl escaping had just started, when it suddenly stopped. As though she was intercepted in the middle. Indeed, at the next instance, Yiqing Luo heard a painful moan. Yiqing Luo snuggled into that man's arms as she popped out her little head. Ghost Girl was suspended in the air, kicking her legs repeatedly. Her body and neck were tightly bound by an invisible force. Yunu's face turned pale as she opened her mouth and eyes wide, desperately looking towards Yiqing Luo's direction, hoping to plead for leniency. Meanwhile, a ray of purple profound light shot out from Dark Girl's neck. As the purple light circulated, it enveloped the azure dragon. In an instant, the black fog around the azure dragon dissipated. Then, the purple profound light shot towards the half of the head that had swallowed Shiju. Purple light flashed. Shiju's small body was faintly discernible. After the azure dragon broke free, it immediately rushed towards White Fang's severed head. The dragon eyes nervously stared at the faintly discernible Shiju. Roar! Shiju's small voice sounded normal and didn't seem to be injured. Yiqing Luo's suspenseful heart was finally suppressed. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered. Her fingers, which were pressed on the chest of the person who was hugging her, unconsciously curled up. That person's chest was boiling hot and the rhythmic feeling of his heartbeat was like a drum, beating heavily on her palm. Chapter 37:20. Between her brows, there was a burning sense of warmth and tenderness. She seemed to be confirming something, but also seemed to be in a dream. Cautiously, he raised his eyes and looked at that person's face, under the sky full of flying sand and blood. The man's peerlessly handsome face was still as outstanding as ever. His purple robe billowed, his black hair scattered on his shoulders. The dancing hurricane floated his black hair. The handsome face that could almost captivate one's soul was reflected in the young girl's pupils at close range. The man's eyes were filled with a smile. His peach blossom eyes were full of pampering for the young girl. Their eyes met. As if even the air was seeping with sweetness. Yiqing Luo's pupils, under the man's pampering gaze, dilated little by little. Her eyelashes were gradually stained with moisture. Her beautiful face was like a peach blossom in March, floating on a cloud. Ah, Xian. The young girl's soft voice was choked with emotion. Her arms tightly wrapped around the man's neck. Smelling the man's scent. Feeling the man's warmth. As if this was the only way to confirm that he had really appeared in front of her. Not in the spiritual state. Not an illusion. But the real him. The man's arms wrapped around her slender waist, his thin lips slightly hooked, gently falling on her hair. A low and magnetic voice came out of his mouth. Yes, it's me. Ah, Xian. Yiqing Luo's arms tightened, completely bringing her delicate body into his arms. She had never thought that Dmo Xian would actually appear in without embroiling city. And appear in front of her. Obviously, when they were in the Spirit Devourer formation, his spirit body had been affected. They had agreed that she would go to Without Shadow City to look for him. Why did he come to Without Shadow City alone? Then his body. Could it take it? This thought made Yiqing Luo's heart clench. She suddenly pulled the distance between the two of them and looked up at him carefully. Ah Xian, you. Are you all right? The man's pampering gaze seemed to be able to squeeze water out of it. Just a glance. Her heart softened and melted. He stared at her face, smiled, and shook his head. Don't worry, you value my body so much, how can I let you worry? Yiqing Luo looked at him without blinking. She seemed to want to see it in his eyes. He wanted to see if his words were true or false. It was just that he was watching and watching. Under the man's gentle smiling gaze. That soft spot in Yiqing Luo's heart felt as though it had been hit hard by something. Tears welled up in the corner of her eyes. Don't cry. His voice was gentle, and he sounded a little panicked. His broad and warm fingers covered the corners of her eyes. His slender fingers wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. He comforted her in a low voice. I'm really fine. Don't cry. My heart hurts when I see you cry. It was better if the man didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, Yiqing Luo's eyes widened as tears started to flow down uncontrollably. She suddenly plunged into his arms, grabbed his clothes, and said with a sobbing voice, Fool! Why did he have to force himself? How can I not know about your body's condition? Stay in Shadow City and recuperate your body, and wait for me to look for you, alright? She choked with sobs as her tears flowed non-stop. Why are you still acting tough in front of me? Don't cry. The man's voice became even softer. Hot lips, replaced the fingers, fell on her eyes. Chapter 37:21. For you, I've never felt forced. Dmo Xian cupped the young lady's face with both hands. The two of them exchanged glances. His gaze was gentle and loving as he explained dotingly, You're in trouble, and if I'm not around, how will you be able to recuperate in peace? His fingers gently brushed past the stray hairs on her cheek and tucked it behind her ear as he continued, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Yiqing Luo's pink lips pursed tightly. Her tears were still uncontrollable. Her eyes widened as she stared fiercely at Dmo Xian, her eyes filled with rebuke. Dmo Xian's lips curled as he lowered his head and kissed her lips, appeasing the young lady's bellyful of displeasure. His lips were very hot. The scorching heat seemed as though it was going to melt her. The familiar scent and sweetness intertwined. Yiqing Luo had no strength to resist, nor was she willing to resist. Dmo Xian's appearance made the entire auction's people and monsters all stop what they were doing. Pairs of gazes converged onto Dmo Xian in unison. Everyone only saw the moment the man appeared. He pulled Yiqing Luo into his arms. While he raised his palm, as though he had just flicked it in the air. Immediately after, everything in the surroundings were restrained by an invisible force. Ghost Girl was restrained. The evil chi which trapped the green dragon was purified. Even White Fang, who had swallowed Shiju, was also forced out of his mouth. What kind of power was this? It was so powerful that he just moved his hand and easily solved the predicament in front of him. The man was treacherous and devilish, like an Azura from hell, holding the power of life and death. Everyone's heart couldn't help but tremble. But what made everyone shocked was that man who was like an Azura killing god, faced Yiqing Luo. His entire person seemed to be plated with a layer of gentle light. As though in his eyes, there was only Yiqing Luo alone. That deep affection. It was filled with love. But this kind of tenderness and pampering appeared on this man. There was no sense of incompatibility at all. Just like, for someone as bloodthirsty as him, the gentleness when facing Yiqing Luo was perfectly justified. Yiqing Luo. Suddenly, in this treacherous and sweet atmosphere. An icy cold voice broke the atmosphere at this moment. It also called back everyone's will. Even without seeing the owner of the voice, one could feel the coldness in the tone. Hearing this sound, Xiao Yulu, who was lying on the ground with all the bones in her body shattered to the point that she could not get up, suddenly turned her head around. She remembered that when she felt the power of the purple-robed man in front of her had trapped her, she felt a chill run down her spine. He sensed the power of another person. Was it this person? Who could it be? Why were there so many people appearing to save that slut Yiqing Luo? When Xiao Yulu looked over, it was a man with a cold appearance, like an iceberg. His temperament was as cold as ice, and even his eyes were like ice shards. However, he was wearing a long robe that looked like raging flames. The bright red color added a touch of liveliness to the man's expressionless face. Xiao Yulu's pupils shrank. She recognized it. This red-robed man, wasn't he, the person in the private room of the Red Clarity Pavilion? In other words, this person was from the Red Clarity Pavilion? Hearing Zhu Wuxin's cold voice, the young lady who was immersed in the joy of charging with her beloved man, finally regained her senses. Her cheeks instantly flushed red. Chapter 37:22. But her actions were quickly stopped by Dmo Xian. A slightly cold, jealous voice came close to Yiqing Luo's ears. Why is he here? Yiqing Luo's petite body stiffened. He's here to take part in the auction. Before this, I don't know anything. If a certain overlord's vinegar jar was overturned, the consequences were simply too severe. Oh. The man's ending tone rose, not knowing if he believed Yiqing Luo's words or not. But the man's dangerous tone told Yiqing Luo this matter was not over yet. Yiqing Luo wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Everything about her man was good. It was this sea of vinegar which had a little bit of terror. Don't bother about him first, you're here. Cat and the rest are here too. Yiqing Luo coughed lightly as she immediately changed the topic. Dmo Xian's peripheral vision shot a glance at the expressionless Zhu Wuxian who was standing not too far away. His thin lips curled slightly as the hand which was encircled around Yiqing Luo's waist suddenly tightened. His tall figure moved slightly, blocking in front of Yiqing Luo, blocking Zhu Wuxian's vision. Without waiting for Yiqing Luo to speak, his eyes drooped as he whispered into her ear, "They're all here, they're very worried about you." Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up slightly, but following that, she revealed a worried expression. "How did you guys come in? Wasn't the auction hall sealed by an array formation? No one should be able to enter and no one should be able to leave. Everyone is already in this array. If we can't get out, wouldn't we be trapped here? You don't believe me?" Dmo Xian's slender fingers pinched her nose as he gently pinched it, his eyes filled with adoration. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips. "I'm very satisfied that you're able to stay by my side and let me see you. I'm worried about your body. Since I'm here, naturally I won't let you worry." His hand slid to her cheek as he gently pinched it. "Don't think that I'm so weak." Yiqing Luo looked at him fixedly as the tears which she had finally stopped started flowing again. She bit her lower lip hard. Her arms hugged his waist tightly as she buried her head in his arms. "All right, I believe you. So, for the sake of me who is so worried about you, I absolutely cannot let myself get hurt." Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as he raised his hand and stroked her hair, comforting her in a warm voice. Zhu Wuxin looked expressionlessly at the scene before him. He watched as the girl threw herself into the man's arms. A sweet smile appeared on the girl's face. Looking at the young girl's face, it was filled with happiness. His heart felt as if it was being pierced by countless needles. Yiqing Luo had obviously heard his voice. She would shyly look up at him from the man's arms. Clearly, there was already a shadow of him in her eyes. However, in the next instant, without any hesitation, she threw herself back into the man's arms. That decisiveness, that clear-cut. It seemed to be telling him in this way. In this life, the only person she would choose was that man, the man named Dmo Xian. That man who, even when Yiqing Luo was in a coma, was still lingering in her mouth, calling out incessantly, "Heh," she knew. Just now, when Dmo Xian struck out, he also appeared to save her. Disregarding the agreement with the secluded palace, just because he wasn't willing to see her get hurt. But in the end, he was still a step too late. Just like how he had promised her in the future. But after she grew up, he appeared in front of her a step too late. Chapter 37-23. It was destined that he was one step later than Dmo Xian. Zhu Wu Xian slowly shut his icy cold eyes. A sorrowful emotion started to spread around him. But, no matter how painful and unbearable his heart was, the expression on his face was so cold. It was as if nothing could affect his emotions and expression. Death God Castle's Castle Lord. When Yu Ji saw Zhu Wu Xian, his expression changed slightly. "You. Why are you here?" He seemed to have thought of something as he speedily looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. "You." Zhu Wu Xian suddenly opened his eyes. His sinister gaze was as cold as frost. It swept past Yu Ji faintly, like December's ice, brushed past Yu Ji's body. Yu Ji shuddered as the remaining words were stuck in his throat. Yu Han's eyes were slightly red as green veins popped out on her forehead. "Death God Castle's Castle Lord. Although revered and you are no longer working together, but now that you've appeared here and disrupted Revered's plans, as a former comrade, isn't it a little inexcusable?" Yu Han's questioning didn't get any response from Zhu Wu Xian. Yu Han looked at Yu Ji, who was being held in mid-air, struggling less and less as she continued anxiously, "Previously you've already spoiled Revered's plans. If you continue to interfere in this matter, then don't blame Revered for not taking into consideration the relationship between the both of you." But no matter what Yu Han said, Zhu Wu Xian didn't even give her a glance. But this noise made Yiqing Luo notice it. She heard Yu Han's words and looked at Zhu Wu Xian as her slender brows creased slightly. Zhu Wu Xian had really broken off the collaboration with the mastermind of Nether Palace. Previously she had intentionally mentioned to him to give up on the collaboration with Nether Palace. At that time, didn't he have that intention? Zhu Wu Xian had many things he wanted to do. He needed something from Nether Palace to achieve his own motive. So Yiqing Luo didn't insist. But now, Zhu Wu Xian had really broken off the collaboration with Nether Palace. Then had his motive been achieved? Death God Castle's Castle Lord. Yu Han wanted to continue saying something. But she was interrupted by a sweet voice. "The person is in Xian's hands. What are you talking about with Zhu Wu Xian?" Yu Han was stunned as she looked at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms as her lips curled up slightly as she gave a faint smile. "This matter has nothing to do with Zhu Wu Xian. Even if you talk till your mouth breaks, it's of no use." "You." Yu Han's face was ashen. "Release Yu Nu. Wouldn't it be very embarrassing for Xian to release him just because you said so?" Yiqing Luo raised her brows as her eyes curved into a crescent smile. "Moreover, why should I let go of the prey that I've already gotten my hands on?" Yiqing Luo's voice paused. Suddenly, the smile on his face became extremely cold. Even the voice that came out of his mouth was so cold that it made people shiver. "She restrained my friends, threatened me, and tried to devour my battle pets. Do you think I would let her go?" Yu Han's face instantly turned pale. His body was on the verge of collapsing. Whereas when Yu heard Yiqing Luo's words, her struggles became even more intense. But Yiqing Luo started to display her face-changing skills again. Her pink lips curled up, and a brilliant smile bloomed on her face. Her voice also became gentler by a few notches. "If you really want to save this beloved woman of yours, then I can. Be merciful and spare her life." She brushed away the stray hair on her cheeks as she laughed lightly. "Release the auction's array, and let us leave this array safely. Chapter 37-24. Impossible. Yu-ji shouted sternly. Yuhan clenched her fists tightly as her scarlet eyes stared at him. I can't let anything happen to Yu-nu. Whether she dies or not has nothing to do with me. Yu-ji's expression was cold. Moreover, I don't want to die. He shot a cold glance at Yu-nu's direction as he said word by word, don't forget what punishment we will receive if we fail this mission. Yuhan's face suddenly turned pale. Yu-ji continued, I have no opinion if you want to die with her, but don't think of sacrificing me to fulfill your love. Yu-ji's words ended and his expression instantly turned vicious. He waved his hand as he shouted sternly, go. Sweep those trash with the fastest speed. After the black-robed men received the order, they started to surge towards the various powerhouses cultivators in the auction. Boom! Profound energy that could topple mountains and overturn the seas suddenly surged. Various powerhouses cultivators thought that they were saved. But in the next instance, they were devoured by those black-robed men. Yu-ji. Yuhan's eyes were scarlet red as she held onto Yu-ji's wrist. Yu-ji laughed coldly as he shook off Yuhan's hand. If you want to die, then go ahead and die. He absolutely had to survive. Suddenly, a painful shriek was heard. Yuhan's pupils constricted. He swiftly looked towards the direction where the sound came from. He saw that Yu-nu, who was originally restrained in mid-air by an invisible force, her neck had been replaced by a pale white finger. Yu-nu cried out in pain. But very quickly, all her voice was strangled in her throat. Yu-nu. Yuhan's eyes widened as she looked at Yu-nu, whose face was filled with pain as she screamed. Ugh! Yu-nu stretched out her hand towards Yuhan as she pleaded for help. Yuhan wanted to rush forward. But her wrist was held by Yu-ji. Do you really want to die? Yu-nu. Yuhan's eyes were red as she struggled to look at Yu-nu's painful look, as though she didn't notice Yu-ji's obstruction. Since you've already made your choice, then, this woman shall be our appetizer. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she looked at Yuhan. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. Her fingers that were clasped around Nethergirl's neck seemed to be casually resting on it. She then lowered her voice and said in a mocking tone, your hearts are all black. Both of you are black. Why do you still need to talk about love? You're lying. Yu-nu spat out a few words with difficulty. He loves me, he will definitely save me. Yiqing Luo raised her brows, really? But why do I feel that he loves himself more than you? The expression on Ghost Girl's face became increasingly twisted and sinister. She hated Yiqing Luo's light and indifferent expression. Wasn't it because he had the protection of the Overlord? Didn't he just think that he had the so-called love? Who doesn't have love?